Good evening. Welcome to our public board meeting for October 7, 2019. I would like to ask for a motion to reopen the meeting. Commissioner Reed, seconded. Commissioner Richardson, all in favor?
Hassan.
Richardson.
Chinya,
McFadden. Reed.
that is 7? Okay. And so 2 absent. Sorry, 3 absent. That's correct. Our student commissioner's not here. I'm going to ask if you're able, please stand, and we will have the presentation of colors. And we want to thank and acknowledge the JROTC from Reach Partnership School. We had Cadet Marlissa Lanier, Cadet Malcolm Lanier, Cadet Robert Montgomery, Cadet Reginald Harris III, Cadet Devin Gibbs, and Cadet Davon Smith. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask Commissioner Bondima if she will lead us with our moment of silence.
Thank you very much. I would like to take the time to recognize the passing of several city schools employees. Each of these individuals was committed to supporting our students through their work. They will be remembered fondly by the greater city schools community. Tonight, we send our deepest condolences to their friends and families. It is with deep regret we inform you of the passing of Donald Gardner, who served in city schools for over 11 years. Mr. Gardner began his career with city schools as a school police hall monitor at Baltimore City College High School in August of 2008. During his time with the district, he served as a hall monitor at several schools such as Pimlico Elementary, Middle School, Baltimore Talent Development, New Era Academy, and most recent assignment to Forest Park High School. He was known for his quiet yet persistent demeanor and his love for the students and the work of Baltimore City Public Schools. Mr. Gardner unfortunately departed on September 21st, 2019, and will be missed greatly by his family, friends, and city schools community. It is deep regret we inform you of the passing of Matthew Bauer. Mr. Bauer was recently hired to become a teacher at Hazelwood Elementary Middle School. Mr. Bauer unfortunately departed prior to the start of the school year on August 30th, 2019. He will be missed greatly by his family, friends, and city schools community. Carlos Liverpool was a rising 9th grader. He just completed his 8th grade year at Calverton Elementary School. Carlos was easy-going and always so calm, cool, and mature. He was excited to attend high school and often talked about getting his first job and earning his driver's license. Carlos had an affinity for style, fashion, and basketball. Carlos' family at Calverton will miss him dearly. Thomas Palmer was an inquisitive student who loved to interact with his peers. He loved to play sports and was a team player. His peers always sought him out first for teen activities. He kept a positive attitude about learning even when tasks may have been challenging. His teachers and peers loved his outgoing personality and his loving spirit. Thomas will be missed tremendously by his Utah Marshburn Elementary School family. Tyreen Brown was an honorary graduate of Augusta Phelps Savage Institute of Visual Arts. He was a young man that was always smiling and looking to have a good time. His smile was infectious to others around him. Tyreen was a two-sport star athlete that played football and basketball. Tyreen played the game with his heart and always left his best on the basketball court or the football field. He had a heart of a lion. He was a starting quarterback in football and the starting wingman in basketball for those Southwestern Sabres. He also represented the Sabres by playing in the East-West All-Star game in football, as well as the City versus County All-Star game in basketball. Tyreen will greatly be missed by his family, friends, and staff here at Augusta Phelps Savage Institute of Visual Arts. Antoine Knight was a junior at Augusta Phelps Savage Institute of Visual Arts. The staff at Austin Phelps Savage Institute of Visual Arts, his family, friends remember him as a kind-hearted, full of laughter, and a natural-born leader. Antoine loved all things about bikes. The 17-year-old loved riding them, fixing them, and teaching others how to ride. Knight became a popular and prominent rider on Baltimore's dirt bike scene. Dante Webb was a ninth grader at Achievement Academy. In his short time with us at Achievement Academy, Dante won the affection of our staff and student body with his bright personality and a great sense of humor. Known to us as Webby, his poetry and writing were powerful, and staff at Achievement still hold on to his work as fond memories. And as an exemplar for other students to model, his favorite book was The 48 Laws of Pal by Robert Greene. He will be greatly missed by his family and his school community and friends, who would take a moment of silence to honor these our school people. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Bondima. At this time, I'd like to have a motion, please, for the approval of the prior open session minutes. By Commissioner Richardson, second by Commissioner Reed. All those in favor? Virginia, that's 7 and 3 absent. Okay, and now if I have a motion for the approval of the closed session summaries. Commissioner Hassan, seconded by Commissioner Bondima. All in favor, please raise your Chinya. That's 7 and 3 absent. Thank you. For the board chair comments this evening, I'm going to turn over my comments to one of our commissioners, Commissioner McFadden, who chairs the Teaching and Learning Committee. At the last Teaching and Learning Committee meeting, there was a presentation that was very powerful, and there was a request that we bring it before the entire board body. So, Commissioner McFadden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to welcome the staff from the wonderful Tench-Tillman Elementary Middle School to come before us now. We talked about several of our schools within the district that are making extraordinary gains in their school, and oftentimes we don't get the right type of media coverage, so I felt it appropriate at a public board meeting to highlight this school and the wonderful work that Principal Samuel is doing. She's an 11-year principal there. She's been at that school for 11 years. And it really just goes to show that the longevity and consistency in leadership and the ability to distribute leadership throughout her entire school community really makes a world of difference for the sake of the young people that they serve. So Principal Samuel and Tench Tillman, and look at them in the yellow. They always come in this beautiful, well, at least they did last time. And we've got more over there, and we've got the young people here too. So, Principal Samuel.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. I have with me this evening Monique Williams, our assistant principal, Zakia Ashley, our ELA coach, Mr. Daniel Murphy, our math coach, and Ms. Rachel Cutler, she's our community coordinator. And together, we've been working diligently to make sure that, and we've had to do sacrifices to ensure that we have coaches that are 100% dedicated to the enrichment of our staff. That has been a key leverage for us, and you'll hear from them as well. And our Ms. Williams and I have been working together for 11 years. She's been here the whole time, and she's been leveraging great gains in attendance. You didn't get a chance to meet her last time, but I wanted her to come and talk about some of those efforts that she's made that are certainly made a difference in our school with our attendance rate of 96%. We also have worked very hard with our community to leverage partnerships, and I really wanted to get a chance for my team to talk about that. We work diligently at Tench around staff development. We work very hard in making sure that our teachers are developed to the point where we run our own new teacher after-school program for new teachers based on Teach Like a Champion. The coaches volunteer their own time to meet with the staff so that we can make sure that they're brought up to speed. We do a lot of staff development around standards, and that work has proven to show forth in many of our gains. So we have done very well. I think our efforts really are around removing barriers. We have a level 1 health center. We never worry about immunizations. That center really has helped to remove all barriers for our students, so we don't struggle in that area. If our students need to be seen around health, we have a nurse practitioner that comes. So we really have worked very diligently to remove all barriers. So I wanted Ms. Williams to talk a little bit about a barrier of attendance and that work there.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. Currently, our ADA attendance is 98.12% at Tench Tillman this school year. We have, you're probably wondering, how we get here. We've managed to be above the state average for over 5 years. The first thing that I did when I took over attendance is I reviewed the attendance data. I wanted to know who were the students that had poor attendance. We found those students that, and our number was a little different. It was 94%. So if you were below 94%, we targeted you. We gave you a case manager. We gave you an attendance contract. We also provided incentives. So every week we checked in. Also, what we did to make sure that attendance is a priority is that we made sure that everybody knows that attendance is important. We said that you must come to school every day on time. That's it. So we make sure that there's no barriers. If you have a doctor's appointment or something like that, we want you to still come to school. So that was a mind shift that we had to change, because sometimes our families believe if they have a doctor's appointment, oh, it's at 10, you can miss the whole day. No, after your appointment, we encourage them to come in. Another thing that we did is we set a goal of our SPP of 97%. I know it's a little high, but we have high standards at Tench Tillman. Next, we found some members of the attendance team that were persistent, that were driven, and that had tough skin. Because with attendance, we have to break down barriers such as students who don't come to school because they don't have clean uniforms or they don't have uniforms at all, transportation issues, hair issues, homeless issues, and mental health issues. So we take all those barriers and we're aware of them and we provide them with supports. So having the right people on the team is very, very, very important. We also build relationships with families and students every single day. Every day we make daily phone calls. We document them. We conduct home visits every single day, even on half-a-days. We give our students daily attendance shout-outs on the intercom. We also give incentives to our teachers. We provide monthly contests for teachers and students. We mail quarterly attendance letters to parents. We hand out attendance bucks every single day. We have perfect attendance awards that go out monthly. We provide students with perfect attendance trips. Our first one will be on Thursday. We're going skating, and we have 153 that have perfect attendance, and that means you came to school every day on time. Yes, so we are proud about that. We also provided, yes, we also host meetings with parents. We sit down, we talk to them, we get to know them. What is the problem? How can we help you? We utilize the social worker, the school nurse, the nurse practitioner, our community coordinator, and other partners to help support our families. And if your attendance is below 94%, we have a case manager that will help you every day with your attendance. So this is how we have the average of 98% at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Williams. So we have strategically placed a lot of energy around attendance, but also academics. So we'll hear from our coaches, our ELA coach,
So a lot of the growth,
our math coach.
sorry, a lot of the growth over the past few years can be attributed to the structures that Ms. Samuel and Williams put in place around providing continuous, ongoing teacher development. Just the fact that Ms. Ashley and I have been, or coaches in general, have been prioritized within the school budget is something unique to Tench Tillman. And as a result, Ms. Ashley and I are completely freed up. A lot of coaches I hear in our meetings have other responsibilities like lunch duty, cafeteria duty, things like that. 95 to 100% of our time is devoted to academic focus. So with that, as coaches, we're in classrooms a lot informally with the majority of our time. We're observing teachers, providing actionable next steps, working with them to develop those next steps. We're modeling in classrooms. We're actively coaching in classrooms. We're co-planning outside of classrooms. So a big priority is being proactive. Something that we definitely have been focused on is being proactive with our teachers so that our students are getting the most effective lessons on a consistent basis. Our collaborative planning, we're going to our second year now where we have 90-minute collaborative planning sessions with our teachers. Because Ms. Ashley and I are in classrooms all the time, we have a good beat for where our teachers are and what we really need to focus on and prioritize within those collaborative planning sessions. So again, we're being proactive with planning on a week-to-week basis around what makes sense in our school for our kids. We differentiate our PD. When we have school-based option days, we're looking at where our students are, where our teachers are, and differentiating groups for a different focus based on what we're seeing in classrooms. Within math specifically, actually, I can't say math specifically. We both are very standards focused and data driven. ELA and math, we both have 3 years worth of park data for our specific students and for our specific teachers. So we're not only honing in on individual student needs, we're also honing in on teacher needs. What students do we need to focus on, and what teachers do we need to focus on? What supports can we put in place so that teachers are delivering the best for our students? We're also using our ANET analysis tool a lot in our math collaborative planning sessions. We're aligning our scope and sequences to Eureka so that when our students are sitting in front of these ANET tests, we're having the most usable data or high yield data to work with, to design interventions, to spiral back so that our students are being exposed to continued misconceptions. Backward planning. So again, with the focus on standards, our teachers need to understand what standard mastery looks like. So our teachers are sitting down and taking the ANET or the ANET assessments and the Eureka assessments so that they're familiarizing themselves with what mastery looks like to drive our instruction.
You're saying that your teachers take the exam.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And it is a way also for us to be able to hone in on misconceptions. That's something that we're planning around and through, so that if we're identifying potential misconceptions, how do we avoid that?
Mm-hmm.
How are we proactive? And that goes again back to our proactive stance on planning and delivery.
So we have a question about misconceptions. So when you say misconceptions, what does that mean for teacher and student?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, there are achievement gaps at times, and that aligns to our prerequisite standards. So we are using that coherence map, and we are identifying where what prerequisites align to the standard, the focus standard for the lesson, and that can help deliver our mini lessons or our way to scaffold down to build back up so that students are mastering grade level standards and they are accessing grade level standards. So we have a lot of these tools that we're at our access that we're using on a consistent basis. I'm sorry, I think I want to make sure that we have enough time for
Also,
ELA.
I think that they just want about misconceptions is if a student is using the wrong strategy or they're not understanding, have a true understanding of what the question is asking them to do. So by them taking the test, if we're using the wrong strategy, of course the student's gonna use the wrong strategy. So we just wanna make sure that those are the misconceptions, that we're using the right tools for the right problem. Sorry.
Ms. Ashley?
And to speak more specifically around literacy, there are also three main focuses that we have. One of them is data, like Mr. Murphy said. In addition to the 3-year cohort data for Park, we also looked at TRC data to figure out where our students are falling in the primary levels as well, and to provide support around that. And then the other thing for data is we focused on new read assessments because we felt that those assessments specifically had rigor that was more closely aligned to the Park assessment as opposed to other sets of data in Wit and Wisdom. The second thing we did was we did a school-wide focus on writing for 2 years in a row. We went to a meeting one time and they introduced something called the Vermont Writing Collaborative, and we really focused on that. We looked at key anchor standards within the writing bands, and we had teachers create prompts, one prompt for all grade levels, pre-K through 8, based on their anchor standard, or based on an anchor standard, and then highlighted through their grade band. And then we brought all of their work assessments to a meeting, and we analyzed how it looks going up and going down the rigor level so that we can make sure our students are always writing to that standard. We implemented a system called Check and Change, which is a process that promotes teacher feedback around writing standards that are aligned to Park. And to make sure that we were specifically targeting standards that are showing up on major assessments, we also did a Park writing data analysis where we analyzed PCRs and where students were falling specifically. And if they were struggling mostly on which type of PCR, then we would make sure that we spent more time working on those standards to promote that support for student mastery. And then the last thing, based on all of that data that we did and that school-wide focus, we also realized that we needed a school-wide intervention. And so we came together, looked at our data over the course of 3 years, and determined that we needed to focus on fluency. We implemented something called Falcon 45, which is all hands on deck, so 3 days a week for 45 minutes a day. Everyone sitting at this table, in addition to every teacher in the building, any partner we have, anybody we can get really, to come and support our students on fluency. And that, right, we're moving into our second year. We've now reached out to new partners to help support that process, but that is where we are.
Thank you. Ms. Cutler?
Hi, my name is Rachel Cutler. I'm the community school coordinator at Tench Tillman Community School. We are a community school, which means we coordinate programs and partners to support academic achievement, strong families, and healthy communities. So I'm going to highlight 3 brief ways we do that at Tench every day. The first one is high-quality partnerships. So we develop high-quality partnerships that meet student and family needs, both academically as well as socially and emotionally. And that means reducing barriers so that students can come to school every day on time and ready to learn. It also means, and also excelling in school, college, and beyond. So I'm just going to highlight a few partners here that really help us do the work every day. Ms. Seymour already highlighted one, our Level 1 Health Clinic. It means that we have a doctor in the building every Thursday, and we have a nurse practitioner there, a nurse every day, Monday through Friday. So it means students can go there, get their medications. It helps us with our attendance. It helps our newcomer families get vaccines when they don't have healthcare access. So it's a huge asset to our attendance and to support our families. In addition, we are a 21st Century Community Learning Center with our Creative Alliance after-school partner. So that means that last year, and this year as well, we just started the program this year. Last year, we had 150 students enrolled in comprehensive after-school programming from 2:30 to 5:30 every day. They had an hour and a half of tutoring and academic time, and then an enrichment that helped them explore the arts and sports that they enjoy. In addition, we provide a lot of social supports, again, to reduce barriers for students to come to school every day on time and ready to learn. We have a food pantry twice a month. We have weekend bags we send out to students who are homeless or have food access challenges. We have a uniform closet and laundry services. We also, like to provide enrichment and leadership development opportunities for our students through school clubs. So we have partnerships with Baltimore School for the Arts, the Urban Debate League, robotics, we have a Queens Club, we have basketball, we have Green Team, all opportunities for students to explore avenues and areas and interests that they love. And the Creative Alliance as well. In terms of our partnerships, we strive to create alignment so that our partners understand our vision and our goal and are aligned to that vision and those goals. So we do that through open communication with partners, really constant communication, and through monthly meetings through our school family council helps us to align the work. We cultivate partners that are able to meet our needs. One example, recently we had a real technology deficit at our school, and we were able to, by talking to enough partners and cultivating a partnership with Johns Hopkins, we were able to get 3 laptop carts at the start of the school year. Finally, family engagement is really important to our school. And for us, family engagement is meaningful. What we value is authentic participation in the school. And what that looks like is a structured volunteer program with a trained and committed volunteer base. So we have parents and family members in the school every day partnering with teachers. They're working in classrooms, pulling small groups. They're helping with the attendance strategy. And helping with all the other little stuff that we need every day. So those are just 3 strategies I wanted to highlight that we do as community school.
Thank you. So as you can see, our work, one of the words that my team and I, we do this daily, consistently. These are the strategies that we implement on a daily, consistent basis that has yielded us gains. All right.
Yes, but before I want to say that what we're listening to tonight is a byproduct of all of the work that systemically is being done for the sake of schools, right? We hear the social emotional work that's happening, the community schools work that is happening. They were also one of the first schools to become an intensive learning site. So it's all of that work that we sit in this room and talk about is being taken and translated by a strong team of folks for the sake of young people. Commissioner Frank, if I may, before you ask your question, just tell me the amount of students that are in your school. What is enrollment like right now?
Great question. We're a small school. We have 400, so that means we do a lot of strategic planning financially. Yes.
Exactly. And it's still more than some of our schools. And also, I want to just highlight that they didn't talk about poverty or the socioeconomic status of the young people. We just heard about the systems and the team and the collaboration and the care and the genuine concern for young people and the data-driven practices that they've employed in their school to make sure that their students are growing. And clearly we're going to see that in a few weeks when it comes to us and the data doesn't lie. And we're going to see how the achievement looks that way. Commissioner Frank?
Well, one thing is very clear is that you all like each other a lot, and that matters. I did want to ask you about the budget. So you are an intensive learning site, but it sounds like you've made some interesting budget choices. Can you just talk a little bit about how you accomplish this within the per pupil allocation and what other supplemental resources you get?
Excellent question. My coaches were incentivized. Mr. Murphy is a model teacher, so he took advantage of that. Miss Ashley has been working at teacher level salary, her commitment to the job. Now she's an ILS coach. Ms. Cutler, of course, you know, Family League, Ms. Williams, she wears multiple hats. She talked about attendance today, but she does observations, SST. So many of the leaders, that they are well-trained leaders, so they're handling multiple priorities and doing it very, very well.
Commissioner Richardson?
I wanted to talk about the community schools partnership that you have. This school's in southeast Baltimore.
Yes.
Yes. What program do you report to?
Yeah, I work with the Southeast CDC.
Southeast CDC. Tell oh, my friend, what's your ED?
Oh, Carrie Snyder.
Yeah, tell
The
Carrie I
South-
said hello.
I-
So, but I want to point something out here is that because we're moving into a place where we're getting more community schools dollars to support more of our schools. This does not work if the principal doesn't believe in community schools. We have some schools that use their community school coordinator in different ways. And so I just want to applaud you for using the model in the way that it's intended. And you heard her say they got 3 laptop carts. That's not an easy task, but that's based off of partnerships and relationships. And so I just want to congratulate you all on doing this the right way.
Thank you, I agree.
You could only imagine what we could do with more money, right? So, Thank you.
For being willing to come again, because they presented to us last week. But thank you for taking the time off to come again. And I'm going to turn it back over to our special.
Thank you.
I just want to say really quickly, you all, what is wonderful is that the board recognized what has been a pattern in the data. And if you all would never say it, but for the last 3 years, when I review the schools that pop in the data, Tench Tillman has literally been there every single time. And it is not just because, great, they have one score here or there, but when you actually look at the disaggregation, one of the things that's so compelling, and this gets to Commissioner McFadden's point, about this is not a school that fixates on the poverty of the kids and doesn't fixate on how do we water it down because the kids aren't ready, right? When this school says meet the needs, what you see is they are growing schools, and I'm looking right at Teresa, Chief Jones, sorry, because when you look at their growth rate, they actually exceed the growth rate of the state. When you look at schools that are serving young people that start where these young people start, this school actually exceeds the majority of schools in the state of Maryland. And so part of what they are doing is the real hard work at the ground level. I walked that school. I got a chance to see what the coaches do and work, and it is the real nitty-gritty work of not how do we skirt the lessons and say that they're too hard for kids, but how do we make sure that we can break it down? How are they reflecting on class, on the actual content, as well as they do a wonderful blend of the instructional core with the social emotional needs of kids. What the assistant principal did not tell you that she told the state superintendent is that, which by the way holds with me to this day, she will go to children's homes and families let her in when they are late. This woman, she didn't describe all this, she watches the clock. And she, and I believe a community school coordinator, they do this every morning, right, Principal Samuels? And they will go to kids' homes because they have relationships. And even if the adults in that home might be in a challenging situation, they know it's somebody that they trust. And they are able to go in, and families will, I don't want to say give over their children, but because they know that this is a community that cares, even if I'm having a hard day as mom, I know that there's a family at Tench Tillman who will take my child and do right by them, and at the same time, the learning outcomes are exceeding. And I think that's like the beautiful part about you picking them out. I didn't tell you to pick Tench Tillman, right? But every year they pop in the data, and every year they have, for at least last 3 years I've been sitting in this seat, they grow and they continue to grow. And it's not just for Baltimore City. We often say, oh, they exceed and they do well for Baltimore City. This is a school that pops on growing children when you look at the state data. And so I just want to commend them, and I want to thank you, Commissioner McFadden, and Board Chair Chinya, for giving them the time to do it. But I just wanted to go on record as saying, you all won't say it, but I will say it. You are exemplifying what it means for a community to come together around the potential and the promise of our children, meeting their needs, but not fixating on their environment. And it does show eventually in data. Everybody wants to poo-poo data. I'm not saying data is the end-all to be-all, but you have proven that when adults are aligning their behavior, kids and families benefit. So I just want to thank you all for really great work, and I'm glad we got to see it today. So thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank
Really
you.
quickly,
Thank you.
really quickly, if we could, the two young people, our students that are here, can we have them introduce themselves? Can you introduce yourself and tell us just one thing that you really enjoy about your school?
Math.
Tell us your name first. What's your name?
Mason.
Mason. Okay. Now, one thing that you like about your school?
Math.
Math.
Carter.
Carter. What do you like, Carter?
Math.
Math. That was great.
I want to say to Mason and Carter, thank you, because if it were my grandchildren, they would have said recess. So thank you for saying math. To the Principal Samuels and staff, thank you for really showing us the model of what happens when the adults come together and work for our children. And thank you on behalf of the children, too. Thank you so much. We do not have donations to report for this evening, but as you heard our principal say, and I guess I'm going to say this for the public, the system will gladly welcome donations and support from the community. So if you would like to make one, please contact us. May I get a motion to approve the personnel and quasi-judicial matters at this time? Commissioner Richardson, is there a second? Commissioner Bondima, all those in favor? The personnel and quasi-judicial matter.
Richardson.
Chinya. Okay, that's 7 and 2 absent, sorry. Okay, so I believe I am ready to, I just want to explain, because I know people are probably wondering why we're up here saying our names. The board is helping, we decided to help me out, and so when we're doing our vote, that's really what we're doing, instead of having one person read off all the names. So if you were wondering why we could continue to say our names, that's why. Dr. Santelises.
Thank you, Board Chair Chinya. I am going to invite Chief Grant Skinner for this evening's PEP.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Dr. Santelises. We have 3 appointments this evening, and I believe all 3 individuals are here to stand and be recognized. First, Melissa Loftus, Educational Associate 2 of Secondary Literacy, is appointed Coordinator, Literacy Blueprint, effective October 8th. Rudine Harris, Assistant Principal at Digital Harbor High School, is appointed Managing Assistant Principal at Augusta Fell Savage Institute of Visual Arts High School, effective October 8th. And Marianne Cox, Deputy Chief Financial Officer, is assigned Interim Chief Financial Officer, effective October 8th.
Thank you, Chief Grant Skinner. As has become our practice, I would like to, thank all of tonight's candidates and congratulate them. And then I would like to say a little bit more about now acting principal Rudine Harris. We should all know that she joined City Schools in 2006 as a math teacher at W.E.B. Du Bois High School. She became an assistant principal in 2012 at the same school and served as the managing assistant principal for 2 years. Since 2015, as we heard, Ms. Harris has been an assistant principal at Digital Harbor High School. Her quote that she cites as her personal mantra is from Marva Collins, that there's a brilliant child locked inside every student. Ms. Harris holds a bachelor's degree from South Carolina State University and a master's in school administration and supervision from Johns Hopkins University. We wish her continued success and thank her for assuming the new position as managing assistant principal at Augusta Fells Savage High School. And then Mary Ann Cox. I don't even know what to say. It seems a little, I will say some of the formal pieces first and then some other quick additions. Mary Ann first served with City Schools as a financial analyst and accounting manager from 2005 to 2008. After 2 years as fiscal officer for the Curriculum and Instruction Division with Baltimore County Public Schools, Ms. Cox returned to City Schools in 2010 as comptroller and subsequently became Deputy Chief Financial Officer in 2017. Ms. Cox holds a bachelor's degree and an MBA from Drexel University, and we are very pleased that she will continue her leadership in our finance division as interim CFO. I would also like to say here that Mary Ann, like clearly a lot of people, but in this particular case, Mary Ann did not need to take on the extra headache of serving as interim CFO. She deserves many a vacation, even though she is reluctant to take them at all. But I will say that in my conversations with Mary Ann, as we have looked to allow former Chief Walker to transition, and by the way, he spent an extra year to 14 months of that transition. One of the things that became very clear to me is Mary Ann feels a very deep connection and responsibility to Baltimore City Public Schools. And I don't believe she would do this for just any system. I think it is because of the pride that she takes in her work, as well as her commitment to ensuring that we uphold the kind of standard that she has set at a high level. And she knows and understands very acutely that any advocacy we do on behalf of children is linked in very important ways to our ability to demonstrate continued excellence in financial stewardship. So I want to thank Mary Ann for all of her work past and present. And she knows, but I will also say to you all that Chief Walker has calmed both of our nerves. Former Chief Walker has calmed both of our nerves in that he will be assisting at times when we need some additional hands as we continue our full search. So I want to thank Mary Ann for that. So thank you, Mary Ann. So for 2 years, City Schools and Sandtown Winchester Community and the Sandtown Winchester Community worked to bring 2 schools together through numerous meetings and the support of a wide range of community partners. Special thanks go to our partners at Under Armour and Heart of America who provided financial support, but equally important, they also recruited hundreds of volunteers who worked tirelessly on the gym, library, classroom, staff lounge, main office, cafeteria, landscaping, and much more. From Under Armour's design for the new logo and mascot to Heart of America's invaluable efforts in supporting our students and schools, this was truly a community-wide team effort. For those of you who may not remember, this was a school where the board, I think, took a very courageous position in saying that there was a new way that we needed to bring school communities together. And the fact that so much was riding on this in a community and schools that have often felt overlooked, the fact that 2 amazing partners in both Under Armour and Heart of America came in to add what we
might not have been able to do anything close to what we would have been able to do had we been solely relying on our own resources, to let the two school communities who were coming together as one know that they were valued. And so what I'd like to do now, as is the wonderful gem of our student media team, Jamara Martin is going to walk us through a little bit of what young people and staff had a chance to experience as volunteers, again, from both Under Armour and Heart of America, alongside the students, actually saw adults coming out, beautifying their space to make their new school something special. So if we could roll the tape now, that would be great.
Hey, this is Jamara Martin, right outside of Santana Winchester Achievement Academy, where an entire community has come together for our students. And just days ago, a huge team of volunteers from Under Armour and Heart of America completed an extreme makeover for the ages. The gym, cafeteria, auditorium, library, classrooms, hallways, landscaping, new mascot and logo, the list just goes on and on. It's simply amazing to see all the improvements. How could you not be excited for this school?
Because when I'm sitting in there, they're going to paint a new color.
In front of the wall when they writing on there, the colors, it's like fishes, like the ocean and stuff.
To see how good it is.
It's gonna bring happiness and all that. Feel great, like people like don't get this opportunity.
Our school just needed so much work and so much TLC, and we really wanted a space where kids could come and feel, at home. They could feel like it's just a special place for them to learn.
But here's the real school. The road to get here was not easy. Facing the closure at one of the two schools, the Sandtown Winchester community spent the last 2 years working together to combine the two schools by coming up with a new name, choosing the grades, bringing in community partners like Jubilee Arts to create new murals, and finally, the makeover by Under Armour and Heart of America.
It is a true testament of how much they're cared for and how much we care about them.
This is a house for a lot of people, a lot of family, a lot of community, and we're thrilled to be a part of it too.
Just coming together and taking two schools but merging a community in a way that no one believed could happen.
So one of the coolest things we saw was students working right alongside volunteers by taping, painting, lending a hand, and simply giving back to their own school. And the volunteers had fun giving back too.
It makes me feel useful. I can help out the community. They're painting the walls for the library. When they get the books and stuff straight, we have a straight library.
Okay.
So for the last 2 days, I've been helping yesterday and helping today. Painting, security. When we went to lunch, everybody was talking about how the floors was good, how the painting that was on the two tables we did, the painting that's on the wall when you first walk in.
Put our hands together and minds together and come out here and just kind of help out and fix up the school. Just trying to turn this place into a really good, happy place for all the kids.
Last week, the gym wasn't quite done yet, as the decision was made to completely resurface the floor, paint the walls, add pads, and even create an experience for the kids as they head into the gym.
Before it was old, looking red and stuff. I can't wait till they see the gym. Shout out to Under Armour though, and Heart of America. My school is great because my teachers love me. They love classmates. Love my classmates. I have heart for them.
It's important because we need it because this school works really hard. They giving us flowers, they giving us trees, they giving us book bags. We work, the more we get on a higher level.
I'm just so happy to be in this position and, able to offer such a great improvement to our students and the community.
With the makeover complete, all the scholars here at Sandtown Winchester Achievement Academy are more than ready to enjoy, appreciate, and most importantly, succeed in school. And special thanks to all our community partners. This has been Jamara Martin for the City School Student Media Team. See you soon.
So thank you again, and I will just say the one thing that I invite you to do at some point is to actually see the before pictures. A lot of what we saw were the after, and when you see the before, it literally is remarkable, the difference in the space. So thank you again to both Under Armour, Heart of America, and everyone who was part of this project. Also, October is National Principals Month. And I am very pleased to take this opportunity really to congratulate all of our school leaders, really thank them for what I think is one of the toughest jobs in the country. I don't know why anybody, given some of the challenges, would want to go into school leadership if they only looked at some of the surface elements of the job. But what I will say about principals here in Baltimore City, these are folks who, as we saw today with Principal Samuels, who are driven by more than just the title, are driven by more than just what they are compensated with regard to payment. They are actually folks who believe that this work is some of the most important work that we can do. It is, and to be frank, look, who the CEO is really pales in comparison to who the school leader is, both for children, their families, next to classroom teachers. Principals are the folks who people see as the outward manifestation of what schools should be. I am pleased to actually say that on most of my school visits, young people will say, wait a minute, who is she? But they all know who their principal is. Every young person knows the principal of their school. So I want to thank our principals, because a good principal really is a leader, a teacher, a communicator, an academic, a cheerleader, an office manager. They are somebody who performs all of these functions well. And again, the only way that our blueprint will become a reality is with the extraordinary leadership that our principals bring every day. I wish I could give everybody a brand new car like Oprah does, but since I can't do that, I will just say thank you. Thank you to our school leaders, and happy October Principals Month for our school leaders. And please keep your eyes peeled, because our communications team and some of our partners will be circulating profiles of principals throughout the month of October, as a way of just showcasing some of the more extraordinary leaders that we have in Baltimore City. And then finally, on Thursday, October 24th, the Coalition for the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, spearheaded by the Maryland State Education Association and Strong Schools Maryland, will be hosting a Kerwin Community Forum at Dorothy I. Height Elementary School at 6 p.m. The coalition has been holding community forums across Maryland to push for the long-term funding commitment our students and educators deserve. But this is the only forum that will take place in Baltimore City. We really are at a crucial point in the work of the commission. And I really want to strongly encourage our staff, our teachers, our school communities. There was a round of Kerwin-sponsored meetings that occurred probably about a year and a half ago. And I remember members of the Kerwin Commission saying to me at the time that Baltimore City easily at that time had the largest turnout in the state. I want to encourage all of us, again, families, staff, whether it's central staff, school-based staff, let's turn out. It might only be one meeting, but this is a time for the strength of Baltimore City Public Schools to come out. Let's be shown, let's be heard, and really, I just want to urge everyone to attend. If you've got to pick a major meeting this year, this is one that it would be fabulous to have a strong show of support from a variety of sectors of our community. And with that concludes my remarks for this evening, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I think at this time we have one information item, and that's the policy KCD, a first reader on gifts and donations. Is someone here? No, we have this. Right.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. We don't have teleporting technology yet. But maybe that could be a gift or donation. But all right, so actually tonight's a pretty good segue to this because we already talked about the importance of community partnership and business partnership, both through Heart of America, Under Armour, and then Tench Tillman with their community partners. So that's a really good segue. So I do want to say from the jump that this policy in no way is meant to limit gifts and donations. We love gifts and donations, but it's more to help principals in being able to reject ones that may not fit what their needs are, and just to give a little bit more guidance for principals in schools. So this was adopted in May 25th, 2010. Which was a long time ago in city schools years. It's like dog years. Each year is about 100 years. So 9 years ago is a really long time, so it was about time that we update this. In the 9 years since the gifts and donations policy was originally created, we've had some really huge policies that we wanted to make sure that our gifts and donations policy were in line with. One of those, obviously, is ADA, the equity policy. So in the revisions to the policy and regulations, we really tried to make this in line with that groundbreaking policy. The wellness policy also, grant fiscal reporting, and product endorsement. All right, so since the iteration that went to policy committee, based on feedback from the policy committee, we changed the gifts requirements for reporting. So all cash donations need to be logged. That has not changed. But as far as values of gifts, it previously was if a gift was above $2,500, a school could not accept it unless it was board approved. In my time here, that has never happened. So we wanted to give a more realistic number, so that is $5,000, so that we're compliant with our own policy. And definitions were added for programmatic requirements, safety requirements, the technical requirements. Once again, we don't want, like, if a business is trying to get rid of all their floppy disks, we don't want to, them to be forced upon us boxes and boxes of floppy disks, unless a school is teaching a unit on obsolete technology, and then the principal has the ability to accept that. But we really wanted to give principals the ability to say thanks but no thanks. And then the district has the ability then to take those items and redistribute them based on an equity lens. If for example, if someone in this building knows a school has a history of technology program that a principal might not know about, then we could distribute that accordingly. So these are two of the big changes. One of which is in wellness. And once again, if junk food company X comes and says, we want to build you a brand new gymnasium, that might not be in line with our wellness policy, but we don't want a principal who's really could use a new gymnasium to not accept that gift. So really, in an ideal world, we would like everything to be in line with policy ADF, but we don't want to handcuff principals to take away their ability to accept gifts if they feel like it is a betterment of their school. But we did want to be conscious to make sure that in an ideal world, everything will be in line with the policies that we passed. So far, we are kind of waiting to hear back from some groups. I have a meeting this upcoming week regarding some charter feedback. I actually got an email today from Christian. Can you help me out?
Arts every day.
Arts Every Day, yeah. So they sent feedback. So we're still getting feedback. I think second reader's coming up in like a month or so. So we definitely have time to incorporate feedback. So my email address is there. Feel free to shoot me some feedback that you have, and I'll continue reaching out to those groups and some community groups. So I'm open to any questions at this time.
No questions? Okay, thank you. All righty, right before we move to our public comment, I'm going to go through the consent agenda. This is, at this time, remember, I'm just reading to see if there are any items that we want to remove from a block. So If we begin with item 8.01, that is going to be removed. 8.02, which is a second reader for policy BBBD. 8.03, policy DBCA, long-range financial planning. 8.04, policy GCLE, telecommunicating. These are all second readers. Okay. Now moving to procurement items. 12.01, Judy Centers. 12.02, New Fit Kids.
If we could pull that, Madam Chair.
Okay. 12.03, Youth Sports Program.
And if we could pull that as well. Looking to just see how it fits in the overall picture and what data we know about who's accessing after school and if these schools also have physical education programs or if it's supplanting.
Okay, is that for both of these?
Yeah.
Okay. 15.01, school buses. And 20.01, community schools. Okay, so if I'm correct, I have two. Am I correct? Three? I'm sorry. 8.01, 12.02, 12.03 have been pulled already. Okay. We'll come back to the vote after comment. All right. And at this time, we are hearing from the specially recognized groups, and our first group invited is the Parent Community Advisory Board, PCAB. Is there anyone here? Okay. Baltimore Teachers Union, I think I do see Miss Christina Duncan Evans.
Good evening, members of the board. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Christina Duncan Evans, and I'm the chair of the teacher chapter of the Baltimore Teachers Union. I'd like to take some time tonight to update the board on the BTU's involvement on the school district's implementation of the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. Because the Every Student Succeeds Act is chock full of acronyms, I'd like to provide a little bit of background for our viewers. The Every Student Succeeds Act is the federal law that replaces No Child Left Behind, and it identifies schools in need of improvement in two categories. CSI schools, which stands for Comprehensive Support and Intervention, and TSI schools, which stands for Targeted Support and Intervention. ESSA creates these categories of schools and sets up a framework for improving their outcomes. ESSA also creates roles for stakeholders to give input into the improvement process, and examples of these stakeholders are families, community groups, and collective bargaining organizations. I'd like to take some time today to talk about some of the ways that the BTU is planning on participating in the school improvement process. One way that the BTU is planning on supporting school improvement is by celebrating the growth at our CSI schools. We'll be doing this by inviting our members and building representatives to our institutional comment during school board meetings to share the progress that they're experiencing so that we get more opportunities to hear from schools like Tench Tillman that are really doing amazing work. We're also planning on highlighting the members supporting CSI improvement at our monthly building rep meetings, in our email blasts, and on building representative bulletin boards. ESSA also includes provisions to include teacher voice in the school improvement process, and for us at the BTU, that means teachers and PSRPs. We've been asked by Casey Mingala to provide some examples of how robust and meaningful teacher voice can be incorporated into the process, and this request is hopefully an encouraging recognition of the fact that the ultimate success of school improvement depends on the investment of the school community, and that input in the process can drive teacher investment in that process. With that, I have 4 suggestions for how the district can meaningfully increase teacher voice. The first step is to accept and embrace the mindset that bringing in teacher and PSRP voice means going above and beyond the requirements set out by state and federal law. The law requires that union representatives must be at the table during the development of CSI plans, and increasing teacher and PSRP voice could mean including additional seats at the table for each school to involve teacher voice, PSRP voice, and related service provider voice, because these different roles have very different lenses on student achievement and school success, and the diversity of perspectives ultimately strengthens the final result. Another option for increasing teacher and PSRP voice could be to allow teachers, parents, and community who are not formal members of the team creating the plan to observe at meetings where CSI plans are developed. Number two, a second step to increasing teacher voice is responding to the concerns of BTU members about a culture of bullying and retaliation that they're experiencing that has silenced criticism, including constructive criticism, across the district. A repeated problem in addressing challenges in this district is that teachers and PSRPs report being afraid to speak up about challenges because they have either seen or experienced retaliation. We encourage the district to allow teacher voice in options that allow anonymity, because we can't allow fear to be an obstacle to our progress. Third, we encourage the district to use professional development time and monthly faculty meetings to share with teachers and PSRPs the school performance plan, the Maryland School Report Card, and the CSI Needs Assessment that was conducted in the spring by the University of Maryland. Educating teachers and PSRPs on the ways their schools are assessed and evaluated is the first step to meaningful teacher and PSRP engagement and investment. We also suggest that the district allow teachers and PSRPs, as well as community and family, to take a vote of confidence affirming the community needs assessment. A vote of no confidence would trigger the opportunity for the school community teachers or PSRPs to submit comments that would be added to the official documents submitted to the district and state. Finally, we ask that schools begin to measure the number of teachers, PSRPs, and community members who are, number one, educated about the CSI-TSI process, and number two, the number of stakeholders who give input into the plan. As this is a 3-year process, continual improvement in engaging stakeholders should be an important aspect of the work we do, and the goal here would be to provide a baseline of data from which to grow. Finally, we are asking for the district's help in knowing when each school meets to determine these plans. There's a requirement that union representation be at the table when plans are developed, and sometimes the default action is to tap the building representatives at a school, but not every school has a building representative. Thank you. I only missed one sentence and made it through my comments. So if you have any questions.
No, Ms. Duncan, you know what I always ask you.
Send it in writing.
Please, because it was great and a lot of good requests and recommendations, but if you could give it to us in
Absolutely.
writing, we could definitely then act upon some of those things.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Just as a clerical point, when I email school board at BCPS, does it go automatically to everyone, or is that account later than?
I would actually tell you to just, if you email it to Mr. Gant.
Sure thing.
Then that way we'll have it.
Thanks
Can
so
Christian
much.
answer her question about
Yeah.
school board?
We'll also monitor the school board account and share too if it's something for the board.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next group is the Special Education Citizens Advisory Committee. Ms. Phillips, welcome. I know we walked in by mistake.
Good evening, the Board of Commissioners, Dr. Santalise, and everyone that's in the building. Good evening to you all. I come before you, I've given out, Mr. Gant, our newsletter for the fall. We partnered with our Partners for Success to put a newsletter together so you can see some information and about the wonderful things that's going on in special ed. We have a meeting. It'll be October. We have Miss Wendy Barnes is going to do an overview of 504. I would like to see some of your faces in the place, if you can, so that you can see and understand what happens with the 504. Sometimes we talk about special ed, but until you see it in practice, you might not really understand how much it takes to educate one student with a special need. It's a lot of work into it, but if you see the plan and how we set it up, It will help us to get the word out how important it is to continue to work. I come before you because I know this is live, and some parents and some students and some teachers out there might not realize that CCAT has a monthly meeting, and it's every second Monday of the month. Also, we have a young lady who's a community advocate and a volunteer to come to talk about the student's perspective on an IEP, what it is to have had an IEP and matriculate that transition, and now she's in college. It would be wonderful for somebody to see and hear this young lady and understand what she's went through to get an education and to continue on to go to college. It's very important. I would like to see some of you are in this building and in this room today to come to that meeting so you can understand what it is takes place in order for us to continue to work in special ed. I thank you very much for listening to me. I see you on the second Monday, which is next Monday.
Don't leave yet. Commissioner Frank.
You were very persuasive, but I didn't get the date and time of the meeting.
It's next Monday.
Okay.
It'll be in this boardroom.
Is it in here?
All the list
Okay.
of every date for this entire year is on that newsletter.
I see it. But the one in particular where the young lady's going to come?
She
that's-
will be here
Okay.
next Monday.
Thank you.
And I would like for you to come and hear what she has to say. How wonderful she was been able to get through what she needed to get through in order to go to college. So she's working on her second degree.
Wow.
And it's important, because if she can do it, then the rest of the children of Baltimore City
Absolutely.
can do it well, if they have the right resources, the right staffing, and the right support. Thank you.
Don't leave yet, Commissioner McFadden.
Ms. Phillips, I just want to say thank you for your dedication to this. Certainly, I'm very familiar with 504 plans and IEP, that entire process. My question to you is, how are you disseminating information like this and about your meetings in our schools that have above average special ed populations?
I reach out to the IEP chairs.
So you're primarily going through the
I go
IEP chair?
I go to back to school nights. I go to PTO meetings. I go to the schools. I talk to the principals.
And do you have a list of schools that have that serve more students with
Yes.
special needs
Yes.
than others?
Most of the time, it's a separate day schools. I target them in some of the community schools as well.
Okay.
But mainly the separate day schools like the Lewis T. Murray, Claremont, Bear School, and George W.F. McMicken. I'm the PTO president.
And how can we better help get the information out so that we're hitting more of our students that are served in special education?
Most of the time is good by word of mouth. We are in the process of putting together a Facebook page. I need someone to manage that in order to get more information out. Also would like to have, since you're asking, I would like to have it live so parents that can't come can look at it.
Your meetings?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
If it's possible. That would help me. It's about empowering the parents. We must empower them that they may empower their student or their child. But the only way we can do that is we get them in. Like I said, my goal this year is collaborate, connect, and communicate.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's got to be done.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
refuse to give up.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, well, we heard that one request, and we can certainly work on that. This is excellent.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're going to all, as board members, our assignment is we're going to post this so that we know what those dates are.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you. I know one time I can remember a very special person saying to me, the special education is a service, not a destination.
That's right.
And so thank you for being a great advocate.
Because they don't
for
have
our
to stay, even though they have an IEP or 504, they don't have to stay in a separate day school.
That's right.
We
Thank
need to move them forward academically.
Yes. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We had no other recognized group signed up. So if there is anyone, this is the last chance to say, all righty. No one jumped up. And I have a message that we have no one signed up for general public comment. So, board members, I am ready to go back to the consent agenda. If there is nothing else that you wish to pull from that agenda, I'd like a motion to accept the consent agenda. Commissioner Hassan, is there a second? Commissioner Richardson, all those in favor? Virginia? That is 7 and 2 absent. Okay, and now we'll go back to the ones that were pulled. Am I in the right order here? Okay. So, policy 801. Do I have a motion for that on policy?
I hereby move that policy BGB is waived to permit the board, upon majority vote, to amend policy BEGB without going through the reader process, and that the board approve the amendment to policy BEGB to change the order of the existing agenda.
I'm sorry. Second is Commissioner Hassan. Oh, I thought you had. I thought you had your hand up for a question before. Are we ready to vote? All right. All those in favor?
Richardson.
Chinya. Okay, it's 7, 2 absent, 3 absent. Get it right. Now we're, the 2 items from procurement, 12.02, new Fit Kids, 12.03, youth sports program. I think the questions were the same for both.
Go ahead.
So my question on both of these is just, and I don't necessarily need an answer now, but just flagging it. Do we have the capacity to share sort of overall, these are all the after-school programs that are school-supported or central office-supported in schools? So we know how many are arts experiences, how many are physical activity experiences, how many are academic enrichment, how many are academic remediation, how many kinds of kids are involved. Just to kind of give a big picture, I think the community doesn't really fully grasp how comprehensive we are helping to serve the whole child, and how distributed across the city opportunities are for young people. And when we pull them and we do just a small procurement here and a small procurement there, I'm not sure that they're really seeing the investment we're making outside of school. And then just to double check the second part of that question is that what's happening in the school day maintains the arts and physical education and health education, so that, and tutoring and enrichment, so we're not waiting till after school, because we know not every student has that opportunity to participate.
Great. So, hi, I'm Cleo Hirsch. I'm the Special Assistant to the Chief of Staff. I'm going to answer the latter part first because it's much simpler, and then I'm going to pass the mic to Dr. Warren, who will answer the beginning of your question. So both of these procurement items we're coming back to the board because we ended up having to spend more than we expected with these vendor partners, and that's because the concentrations of poverty grant that the school district received through the Bridge to Kerwin funding this past year enabled schools to invest a portion of that grant they received to invest in enrichment opportunities that they felt that they needed, and it's all supplemental. So this doesn't replace the physical education or the arts programming, the arts and music teachers that they already had. Specifically, these 2 vendors do structured recess programming and after-school programming, and it's all enrichment supports on top of the existing athletic or extracurricular programming they already have.
So all of those schools have a full-time arts teacher and a full-time licensed physical educator.
So I'm not saying that in those words. I'm saying that the COMAR requirements that the schools must meet, which we review as we go through budget collaborative processes and we look at school budgets, were not waived because they got these additional resources, that these are all on top of the supports that they had planned for and budgeted all along. Schools receive waivers for different circumstances, so I couldn't say with 100% certainty the exact staffing model of every school.
Yeah, and most schools aren't using a waiver. They're just not budgeting for it. So that's why I just want to be really careful that we're being intentional about when we're offering additional, in order to truly supplement, that those programs are going into schools that are already providing basic services. That the basic services are being provided. It's very easy, and oftentimes you'll hear parents say, we have fit kids after school, so that's our physical education, which is not.
Yeah. So for this particular grant, which is the first time we received this from the state, schools had no knowledge that they were going to be receiving these concentrations of poverty resources. They actually didn't come until the summer when staffing models and everything was already set. It was great seeing the principal from Tench Tillman, because I remember I got a call from her where she was like elated that she was literally almost in tears because it was this money that she didn't know, and she was going to get to do, she's such a strategic leader that she could get even more resources into her building to support her students. And it was a very exciting day for us to, share that information with her. So schools didn't preemptively not hire somebody because of these resources.
Absolutely, and let me clarify in case that was a suggestion that sounded like it was happening. What I'm saying is, are we as a district level doing oversight to make sure that we're not incentivizing by saying, well, there's a grant, you could do this after-school program, therefore you can save money during your day. So I'm not, and it's not a blame at all, it's just really a check-in.
No, so that is not what's happening. I think the budget collaborative process to which Cleo referred is where the principal supervisor, a team of people, including folks from academics, sit down with the schools and then talk about how to develop their budget in the most responsible way to support students' education. So we try to comply with COMAR as much as we can. When difficult choices have to be made because there's just simply not enough resources to support all the aspects that need to be supported in COMAR, then they do work with schools to waive requirements if they need to in order to balance the budget, which unfortunately is the case. The concentrations of poverty funds have to be on top of the regular school day expenditures, and so and as Cleo said, we receive them afterwards. But that process is very intentional to go through the process with the principals and to support them in making the decisions that are most effective in terms of supporting student achievement. And the reality is that there are a number of supports that are required by COMAR in schools that our schools do not have the resources to provide. I mean, that is a fact.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner McFadden, are you?
I'm sorry.
Is your question on the same? Oh, I'm sorry.
She was going to answer the other part of the question, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Sarah Warren, Executive Director for Whole Child Services and Support. So thank you for the question. It's actually very timely. We have been working hard to start tracking. It's much harder than you might think, actually, to figure out exactly all of the programs and partners that exist and currently work in all of the schools. There have been efforts made across a number of different offices, and we brought folks together from across offices into a working group, both to talk about that mapping effort, as well as to figure out what some of the priorities are moving forward in terms of our extracurricular and enrichment work. One of the top priorities everybody named was really fleshing out and finalizing that process, which is actually quite involved. And now that we have Chief Hike Hubbard on board, it will be also braided together with the work that her team is doing to do a broader, essentially a broader effort around partner mapping. And they have bought a partner sort of database that we'll be working with to the extent possible. So the other thing that we want to do then is not only know what's happening in which schools, but start to have a better sense of how to gauge the effectiveness, how to map the needs against where we actually have programs running, and then look at it with the overlay of our equity mapping work so that we can see more clearly where the areas of underinvestment are.
Do you have any idea on timeline? Like, are we looking at like 2022, or hopefully by the end of the year we'll have an idea, or?
It depends on which of my colleagues you ask, how long this is going to take us realistically. We'd love to have it this year so that we can then, make better plans for next year based on that. My guess is it will be something that sort of happens in waves, and we'll have increasingly detailed and stronger maps as we go.
Beautiful, beautiful, because it is a huge lift, and far more complex than the community would necessarily understand, but important information, so thank you.
Yeah, and I would add, it's not even a lift that's just limited to the school system. It's something that, for example, out of school time Maryland, we've talked about partnering on that because they bring a different perspective and sort of list of programs that we don't have.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Just really quickly, I'll just flag for you all that at the November board meeting, we are going to share sort of the list you asked for of what vendor partners schools have chosen specifically for the concentrations of poverty budget. And we do have a comprehensive list for those schools because the budgeting process entailed that we track that at the school level. So we will be coming before you in November to give you a more comprehensive update on how schools spent those choice wraparound resources.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner McFadden?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank you all for updating the board letter to align with the wholeness strategy, how YSP Youth Sports Program aligns to that. The suspension information for 16, 17, 17, 18, and 18, 19, what are the numbers? Are those the actual amount of suspensions that were reduced? Or can you just clarify what those numbers mean for the past 3 years? I mean, it sounds like a great program, but I specifically asked about the suspension correlation.
Sure. So these were the number of out-of-school suspensions that we received for those particular schools. One of the things that we're not saying that youth sports program created kind of a causation for these numbers, but the correlation, we wanted to show the correlation between the numbers and the actual program and intervention. What we do know about many of these particular schools is that they have other interventions that they're putting in place that are also probably contributing to the decrease in the numbers as well.
So these numbers that we see are the number of suspensions at these schools?
Out of school suspensions.
Out of school suspensions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions? If not, are we ready to vote on these items? So first I'll start with 12.02, New Fit Kids. All in favor? Is there a second? Okay. Richardson, all in favor?
No.
Hassan.
Richardson.
Chinya? So that's 7 and 2 absent. Okay, so 12.03, Youth Sports Program. Is there a motion? Commissioner Hassan, second Commissioner Richardson, all in favor?
Richardson.
Chinya? So we have 7 and 2, I'm sorry, 2 absent. Okay. Now we're going back to, thank you all. Sorry, thank you. Going back to 2 additional information items. First is policy JLJ, Behavioral Threat Assessment, and this is a first reader.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm James Torrance, the Staff Specialist for Strategy and Compliance.
Good evening, Lori Hines, the Director of Student Conduct and Attendance.
Good evening, Deborah Brooks, Executive Director of Special Education.
We are presenting Policy JLJ, Behavioral Threat Assessment. To give you some background, in 2018, the Maryland State General Assembly passed a law that required us to do behavioral threat assessments. This, in context, was created after a school shooting in Calvert County. Charles County, Calvert or Charles, apologies. This came out of doing assessments for making sure that we can prevent the next school shooting. Also, this actually formalizes our current processes that we have. This aligns with the actions, the training, and things that we already know we do, and it best streamlines it. It also has a requirement that board employees, volunteers, and contractors have to report immediately to a school administrator or designee any expression of a threat. In terms of, we have key definitions to, on the next 2 slides, I'm just going to give you the general definition of a threat. And then the next 2 slides will give you the contextual understanding of threat, because a threat is on a continuum. In terms of threat, we talk about expression or intent to cause harm to someone. It could be spoken, written. It could be written electronically. It also can be in actions. Behavioral threat assessments is our structured group approach into appraising the potential threat and based off the behavior that has been exhibited. A threat assessment is generally just an appraisal. And in terms of, we recognize that non-affiliate persons, which means that persons external to a teacher or a student, could also be a threat to our buildings as well internally.
So there are 2 types of threats, as Mr. Torrance stated. There are transient threats and there are substantive threats. Transient meaning that it can be quickly or easily resolved, or substantive means it involves a detailed plan and it has means to it. There are examples of each of those on this slide. Slide 4, there are actual examples of transient threats, and I'm not going to read them, but they are listed there for you. And the next slide, slide 5, has some examples of substantive threats, which are more serious. Again, they have like a means, they have a plan. They can be very serious assaults, or they can involve like rape or the use of a weapon and so forth. There are various, within those threats, there are threat levels. So there are 4 different types of, or 4 various threat levels, beginning with the low risk threat, which is transient, and then the transient substantive is the moderate risk threat, and then the substantives are the high risk threats and the imminent threats.
And to give you an idea, this is a spectrum. A low risk threat can easily become a high risk threat or an imminent threat, because a simple joke, given the context that different people viewed it from, would change that entire perception of what that threat level is. In terms of policy highlights, we established by law, they allowed us to do school-based teams. We decided to do a community learning network style. We did this because of training and inputs, and to inform cohesion and also make sure that the training is consistent, the messaging is consistent. And we balanced it 2 ways, with persons who are objective and persons who are subjective. Understanding that if you know your school building, you're in your school building, you understand the people in your school building. But there's also someone who should be objective and be able to say that maybe we need to review these records differently. To tell you that this slide, it details the original actual persons identified in the threat assessment team. We added the IEP chair to the threat assessment team because of feedback from stakeholders, as well as the requirement that we have someone with expertise on special education. This is one of the things that we wanted to do because we want to make sure that we do not over-identify students.
So just as Mr. Torrance said, we wanted to make sure that students that had specific disabilities were not targeted for these threat assessments, and wanted to make sure that there was someone that represented special education consistently across the district that also understands disability awareness, the characteristics of certain disabilities, so that, again, those students are not targeted that currently have disabilities. Also, the CEO or CEO's designee will determine the appropriate number of assessment teams. And so those assessment teams are 1 per school, so that these assessment teams are familiar with the students in the building, are familiar with those students that, again, have already been identified to receive special education and related services, but may respond to different incidents in different ways. And so we wanted to ensure that we are not over-identifying or targeted those students.
So in addition to the individual school teams, there's also a district level oversight team. And the purpose of that team is to oversee and provide support to the school level threat assessment teams. And so the membership of that district level team, it includes the executive director from special education, Dr. Brooks, the executive director of the Whole Child Services, Dr. Warren, myself, the director of student conduct. Myself, the director of student conduct and attendance, and the chief of school police, the director of school police, Akil Ham, sorry. And then other district staff as needed, but those are the core members of the district oversight team.
In terms of the oversight team's charge, by law, they are charged with, again, oversight, but they're also in terms of information sharing. One of the things that we did do in the amendments to this policy, make sure that there are disclosure agreements, non-disclosure agreements for non-board employees when reviewing information for our students. We've also sought guidance from advocates on how should we maintain privacy concerns for students. We want to make sure that no one is stigmatized, and we want to be respectful in this process. We also want to make sure that we're sharing information appropriately. So if we want to refer students, we make those MOUs or those understandings of referring them to services. Again, we want to make sure that we are able to assess the information effectively that we're getting, and also make sure that the process is coherent. And this team will be responsible for reviewing those processes. In terms of the policy highlights, we have reporting requirements. We also identify the high level, the procedures for the threat assessment teams. This is the high level of it, but we are also working internally on a guidance document to schools and the specifics of that, because we understand the seriousness and understanding with the roles and expectations of individuals in the process. We understand that this will change because we understand that this will be technically our first year of implementation, and we'll have to review it again later. So the contextual understanding of the policy, because this often, when you hear behavioral threat assessment, people assume that this is for disciplinary means. No, it's not. As we put into our policy a two-pronged belief statement. One is about the safe environment for students. The other is being preventative and also providing the proper supports for the subject as well as the targets of the threat. And those are the things that we're honing in on throughout our entire guidance process. One of the things is we understand that a low-level threat or a low-level risk, we think about the things that can be done. So a simple fight can be resolved in an office referral, but it also can lead to anger management referrals, or it can also lead to any other supports that we need in place because we don't understand totally what's happening. For instance, I will give the example I gave earlier of myself as a student who has dyslexia. If I became frustrated, I often would break pencils or pens. One person may see that as a threat. It may be a low-level threat. But the way that we're working through our processes internally is that we're creating a form that allows people to think about the supports we currently have in place for students. So for me, who's broken a pencil, who's shown or thrown a chair, possibly, because that could be a low risk, because it's not targeted towards someone. It's going through and seeing internally with our own process, do you have records that have an IEP or a 504? Did we provide the appropriate supports for you? And acknowledging that. Because if we see that we did not follow through on our end, it does not need a threat assessment or a referral. It needs us to provide those supports right away to you. And this is where we're trying to make sure that staff are going through the process of thinking and reviewing the records in a manner that allows us to examine not only ourselves, but also the students' behavior and seeing what we can prevent on our own end. In terms of our high risk and medium threats, we know that sometimes this will require suspension, especially if it's assault on a staff person or anything that is express violence towards a target. And that's carried out. We understand that is a requirement, but when that person is removed from that building, we want to make sure the proper supports are in place for when they return. And in terms of an imminent threat, we understand that we have to work quickly to not only protect the targets, but also the subject, and make sure that we contain those threats. For the reporting requirements, we go back to what the law requires us to, but we also understand that we have to, by law, inform the target as well as the subjects that we are performing a threat assessment so that they're aware. Also notify their parents. if they are students. We make sure that we are doing this in a an age appropriate and developmental appropriate means, especially if it's involving students in varying grade levels, because we want to make sure that you're not communicating the wrong thing or instilling fear when there may not have been a actual threat.
So when identifying and reporting threats, if an individual or when an individual makes a threat, we want to make sure that the policy is followed and that the threat level is identified. And then we want to make sure that regardless of the threat assessment that is done, that it does not negate a disciplinary response if that is necessary, and that they also must report it to law enforcement. That must occur regardless of the threat. So the school administrator or the threat assessment team leader first must triage the situation and then make a determination, and they must do that expeditiously as possible. Upon notification, the school administrator, after triaging it, if an imminent threat is believed to exist, they must notify law enforcement, and then the final person that makes that determination or signs off on that level of threat is the licensed mental health clinician that would be in every school. And they have to authorize the threat level and then sign to authorize it. They must sign the appropriate forms.
So in terms of assessment, we have to do it logically through this. So we understand that if there's no imminent threat exists, or we have contained an imminent threat, for instance, if someone called in a bomb threat, we have shown up, we've interviewed the appropriate parties, we've interviewed not only the subject but the targets, and made sure that we've contained it. Because if we know that we can support a student who's made such a threat in a way that is not punitive and also get them the proper supports, that's what we're going to do. But there are some things that we do recognize for triage and imminent threats that sometimes we have to bring in law enforcement for those, especially if it could lead to serious violence or serious harms. But notice that we do discuss reviewing the threatening behavior, especially if it's a communication on social media, or we're talking about the review of student records. We outline in the policy the specific student records. We say that because we want to make sure that we're making an objective decision, understanding what the actual communication was, the independent information that we've had previously on the student or the subject actually in the building, and as well as making the appropriate decisions on who to interview after we review those records. Because if there were persons who were around who heard that threat, to give you an example of a culturally appropriate way of thinking about it, if a student were to say, "I will drag you," in the cultural perspective of social media or current cultural perspective, it can mean I'm joking or I am physically threatening violence to you. But depending on the way that it's said by a student or an individual in a building and who's witnessed it or heard it, it could totally come off different things. So if we interview multiple people and then they said it was a jokey manner, that this happened before, that's not a threat. That's something that we need to talk about, the appropriateness of what you should say in school or not in school. But if it's something where you're threatening physical violence, maybe we need to think about anger management services or mental health services to help you through those actual decision making. In terms of, we also walk through when a threat is not identifiable or you suspect it's low risk but you're not sure. We walk through the procedures for contacting the threat assessment team. But we also understand that sometimes it may reasonably not be something that you with confidence can understand what it is at that time, and you should call in the threat assessment team. So in terms of interviewing, monitoring, and resolving threats, we understand that there's a process for it, and we've actually gone through our guidance document and provided examples of responses to each level of threat to basically make it simple for our teams to understand. But we also understand that we have to interview people. We also have to case manage. That's why the core and the essential person in this process, because they are a gatekeeper in some of our schools, are social workers. And understanding, like if I made a referral to community health resources or expanded school mental health, or anger management, these are things that we can have someone that can follow up with the student about. And in terms of it, we classify that you can only classify the threats on these 4 levels. And then we also discuss that if disciplinary action is required or disciplinary response is required, we might have to do it if it's required by law. In terms of it, we talk about the documentation process. We're currently working on an assessment form that allows people to do the pre-work, which we call the evaluation of our records first, before they even go into a thorough threat assessment. Because we want to basically have staff think about currently where the student is situated and look at their unique situation and review the records. And if it sees that, say, if the IEP chair notices that this behavior may be a manifestation of a student's disability, maybe we need to think about the appropriate supports that we have in place for them.
Going back to slide 20, this is a general question, but this is what triggered it for me. I probably should know this, but we're talking about physical harm. Are there separate policies as it relates to being verbally abusive and that might cause, for example, requests for transfer? Emotional distress or verbal abuse, is that handled differently in terms of how students?
So there is policy JKA, which references a support policy that references student discipline, and there are separate regulations, JKA through JKE, and so JKARB identifies how the discipline process.
No, I'm asking, the threat here is defined as physical harm. And if a student or if anyone's making sort of emotional harm by being verbally abusive, is that not considered a threat?
So this is a threat assessment, and so that would cover like verbal or physical, all of those things.
I didn't see verbal, everything in here, maybe I missed it. I saw this relating to physical harm.
It says oral in the
So I was-
definition.
Yes, so it does cover oral.
It's oral and electronic as well as written.
I don't mean an oral threat of physical harm. I mean if a student is being verbally abusive to another student and that causes emotional distress in that student, is that also covered under this policy?
Then we would, yes, still complete a threat assessment to see if the threat is, whatever the outcome is, whether it's verbal or however the threat is communicated, whether it's a verbal threat or it's causing emotional, we would still do a threat assessment to see what level.
So to give you an
the
idea,
threat would
in our guidance document, we're discussing supports that we have for if the target is a staff person, what the supports we have for a target, as well as the supports we have for students in terms of what referrals would be appropriate for a person who was the target of a threat. So we're discussing that too, because because it's just not only about the subject, but it's also about the community too. So we're discussing how we support the community moving forward when that happens, because these incidents don't happen in isolation. We know that if a threat is being made and it's a serious one, more than likely in a small school community, it will be basically out there. So we need to figure out how we support them in terms of that too.
So also, yes, if a student is verbally inappropriate consistently, and as you said, not making a verbal threat of physical harm, but because of their words and what they're saying, which is then causing another student or an adult to feel any angst, then yes, a threat assessment will be conducted, because what also may need to happen is through that threat assessment, determine what additional supports that student needs, and understanding how those words are then causing disruption to the total school community.
You said it much better than I, and that's what I was trying to say. I just didn't see that articulated or reflected in this presentation.
We can add that to the presentation, but under the assessment for, I believe it says low or unidentifiable, we have there that the threat assessment team will examine and exhaust whether or not there should be further assessment for future capability of a threat. So we have in there in language about the fact that the onus is on the threat assessment team to conduct an assessment of whether a future threat may occur.
I will just say that Joe has texted me from the back saying that in terms of bullying, harassment, intimidation, JIC is the policy that really gets into the procedures associated with that. So it's more likely to fall under JICK, sorry, is more likely to fall under JICK. but it depends on the level of severity.
Could I also just say that what was triggered for me, maybe I shouldn't use the word triggered in this discussion, but what was prompted for me from Commissioner Frank's question is a real need to, like I get the detailed policy piece, but in the going back and forth and trying to place where particular incidents fall under particular policies, like I am just imagining the translation of that to families, even beyond like code of conduct. Like one of the pieces in some focus group results that I was just hearing back from some of our families today with Chief High Cupboard is that families are confused. They are confused about what the differences are. Like if I'm a parent, I don't know the difference between, is it a threat? Is it bullying? Like what category it falls in? So I know that we're reviewing this according to what we need to as a policy discussion, but as somebody who's worked in policy at the federal level as well as at the school district level, the challenge between policy and practice is in the interpretation, particularly for those that policy is supposed to be supporting and protecting. And so one of the themes that came out in a lot of focus groups is part of parents feeling as if their children are not being protected and the response to certain threats are not being heard, I think is in part a communications issue as well. So I know that we do things officially, and that I'm not worried about. I am, I think, pressing based on this, this last exchange, the need to, in the translation of policy, move to the next level of communicating with families so that they understand. Because I hear, I'm just, again, we're a public meeting, and I've heard it from the public, like one of their biggest pieces is folks don't always feel as if they're necessarily being heard from a victim standpoint. And so if it is my child, right, or I am a staff member, and I am teaching or I'm a paraprofessional and I can't translate the difference between these policy pieces, then my experience is one of, frankly, feeling like I'm hanging out there. So I just wanted to insert that. I know it's a policy discussion, but the challenge in a commissioner who sits here just about every meeting, maybe one or two meetings you're not, but who sits frequently, who knows how school districts run, who knows how policy runs, for me, is some of the breach that I'm experiencing in focus group feedback from families, that like a lot of these policy discussions don't trickle down. And as somebody who has worked in policy, if it does not trickle down in the understanding, then it is a great exercise in creating policy, but it does not leave people with any greater sense of knowing what exactly is expected.
I will add that Ms. Trueheart, when we discussed this with her, challenged us on that. And we...
See, Ms. Trueheart, you're not here. But I was thinking like you.
In her challenging us on that, I brought back to the team, we thought about doing a PSA for staff and students, something that we can work with, thinking about visually how we can communicate it, because to me, as a person in my legal background and think about myself as a student and what I experienced as a student in the district, is understanding, merging those two things together, because we need to be able to communicate this in layman's terms and make sure that people understand that, like, this is a process to keep you safe, not a process to penalize you, and that we're giving you resources. This is a resource-based policy. This is not punitive, and that's the things that we're trying to communicate to families. When we communicated that to PCAB, they were great with it. It's getting back there and talking to people about it and making sure that they understand that we are here to, as I tell parents, we work for you, and the best thing to do is communicate better with you.
Commissioner Hassan.
Thank you for that. And I'd just like to add, there's also an educational component to the PSAs in helping kids understand that there are real ramifications for saying something like, I'm going to kill you tomorrow. That there's consequences to that. And while we can blow some of that off, we also can't blow it off in the culture we live in. And so helping kids learn how to express themselves more accurately and intentionally rather than sort of this hyperbolic that goes on that is relatively unmeaningful until it becomes a disaster.
And we also put the documentation for safety transfers because we have a process in place for safety transfers. And one of the things that we talked to, so we've received feedback from Disability Rights Maryland, and we're currently talking with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. The thing that we're discussing is how do we get one reporting and keeping track of it, and they're helping us figure out where that is. And then also understanding with families, like, what are the rights of a victim? And I like to say target, because I think that we're helping you with a resource, because we don't want to victimize people. We want to make sure that people are able to return to their school community to feel safe. And that's the things that we're discovering, is that we have to make sure that we articulate the supports we have for the subject, but also articulate the supports we have for the targets.
I will also just reemphasize what I have been saying to staff, that if we are going to land in the place that I believe we all want to land, right, which is exactly what you described, then we have to pay attention to the national discussions that are occurring when districts don't get this right, right? And it is hard work to balance all of those considerations. But if not, we are going to experience a backlash. I mean, I'm just putting it out there. We are going to experience a backlash in any kind of restorative work we do if we are not clear about, one, these policies, and two, that there are still consequences, right? And I have had this conversation. I have had the hairs on the back of my neck stand up when, through no fault of their own, we have staff members and parents who believe that there are no longer consequences, right, for actions because we are a restorative district. And I know that's not what I mean, I've had these discussions with Lori, so I know how you all think, but I am just saying that in the translation of coming around, building up young people, this is why we put more social workers in schools. This is why we are, we have wholeness rooms, right? We are doing all of that, but the translation of that cannot be, right? There are no consequences. You restore after you face your consequences. I don't tell my children at home, you can just knock somebody upside the head, or, as Commissioner Hassan, I think rightly said, just use random language like, you know what, I'm gonna, beat the mess out of you. And that somehow has no consequence, and we just go straight to restoration. We don't do that. And if I don't do that as a parent, then I cannot expect other parents, I can't sit and face parents when they said, when they're saying, well, now there's no consequences, somebody threatened my kid, and there's no more consequences because we're a restorative district. And again, not that every house has to run like the Santa Lisa's household, but we are very clear. You have a consequence, and we will restore you after. But there is a consequence. And so, some of that language, right, and this goes to what happens when you are loving young people like you love your own. Not loving young people like you are scared of them, like I'm scared of you, so I can't give you a consequence. And so really what we're doing is adult avoidance of actually having relationship with young people. When you are not afraid of young people, then you can sit down, have a conversation, we have relationship, I love you. But my 3 girls know loving you, part of loving you is allowing you to experience consequences, and then you are restored to Team Santa Lisa's. But you will experience that. And I just have to say, we have got to get that right, or we are going to lose our goal of restoration, because people are going to say, this is a bunch of hogwash, and all you are doing is letting kids run around and create mayhem and hurt other people. And that is not what we mean by restorative. So I said that because I know, and Ms. Hines and I have had this conversation, but I just think it's important for us to name it, because if not, we are going to lose any momentum we have around wholeness and restoration.
Commissioner Reed?
And also to your point, there are 2 sides of the ledger. The other side's the victim.
Yes.
If the victim knows there's no consequences, they don't do anything.
That's right.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
And we do go back through the changes we made because we were being very receptive to stakeholder agreement and understanding where we are because we want people to challenge us on what does this look like because we don't want to identify students of color or students with disabilities. We're very clear. We had that conversation with Disability Rights Maryland. We had that conversation with Ms. Trueheart. We had that conversation with NAACP. We've asked for suggestions on things that they've seen at other districts and across the country of what they've seen implemented because we are open to finding out what works and what can work here in city schools. So we've made these adjustments because it was the right thing to do. These suggestions were very helpful to us because it gave us a different lens. We even added language about, and the conversation came up about child abuse, that sometimes students who experience child abuse may exhibit that behavior in the school environment that may become a threat. So what do we do when that happens? So we made a reference to the child abuse policy in the parent notification portion of it, especially if it's coming from something that happened at home. So we're slowly going through this. Even in our discussions, we even discussed the role of each person in the threat assessment, understanding what a principal's role is, a manager's role is, a social worker's role, because we want our staff to have clear decision-making and clear understanding of who they are and what their portion of that actual assessment is. But we also want to be realistic about the onus on this. So we're creating a form that helps and creates a roadmap for consistent decision-making. And that's something that a lot of districts are not really pushing, but we're pushing because we want to have the same common questions. But before you start this threat assessment, we want to make sure you review the records. And if there is something in the records that makes you think that there's no threat assessment needed, you don't need to do it. We need to start thinking about what we can put in place for students.
But I also want to add that as we provide notification to parents, it's the parents of both the suspect and the targeted student. Because as we have heard, what often happens is students no longer feel safe. And part of the reason why they may no longer feel safe is, as well as the parent not feeling that your child feels safe, is because there was no follow-up and no information provided to the parent. So we were very intentional in making sure that as we provide detailed notifications for parents and guardians, it's not only of that student that may have been the person that was providing the threat, but also the targeted student that may have felt threatened. And as Mr. Torrance said, we were very intentional in including those comments from multiple stakeholders, including CCAC, because oftentimes those parents are both those students are not only identified as a possible suspect, but many times are targeted. Those are a number of our targeted students, and so we wanted to make sure that we heard their voice, as well as Mr. Torrance and Disability Rights Maryland and NAACP Legal Defense Fund.
And we also added language about notification to charter operators too, because we understand that the school leadership perspective there may be different than we currently have in the traditional school. So we made sure we were delivering. We took the feedback from the advisory council for that too.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Now, you still have more work to do since this was the first reader, but thank you. Our next item is the city schools ESSA Consolidated Strategic Plan for 2019.
Good evening, Board of Commissioners, Dr. Santelises. I'm Casey Mengel, Special Assistant in the Chief Academic Office, here to present the ESSA Consolidated Strategic Plan for the 1920 school year for Baltimore City Schools. Before I sort of dive into this, I mean, you all have seen me here every year for the past couple of years, presenting on the Consolidated Strategic Plan, which was formerly known as the Master Plan. So I just want to be clear and remind everyone kind of what this presentation is, as well as what it isn't. This presentation allows us to provide some background on the plan, its authorization status. It allows us to introduce anything new that the state has embedded into the plan so that we can share that, as well as a timeline and opportunities for feedback. What this isn't, on the other hand, is a detailed look at the content of the strategies that are unfolded within the master plan, the strategic plan. Pardon me, I've got to get used to that shift in language. Rather, that is posted and available online and will be done so publicly after tonight's board meeting so that the public can read the full breadth of the master plan. This will just help us to understand the content of it and what's in there. So as many of you know, since 2002, for almost nearly 2 decades, we've been asked as a school district to provide a master plan or a guidance document for our work in alignment with things like the federal grants that we receive and the district mission and vision, things like that. This was most recently reauthorized in 2015 under ESSA. And in that experience, we had our 5-year strategic master plan, if you recall, and there were updates to that we did annually. In the 2019 iteration, MSDE has provided a new structure and a little bit of a new focus as we transition into the state's ESSA Consolidated Strategic Plan, which focuses on accountability, reporting, school improvement, things like that. And so what we'll see here is a little bit different, and I'll try to kind of hone in and focus on that. So for city schools and for many other local school systems, the timing of the strategic plan writing and submission of things like the grants that come along with it are such that this really is about an opportunity for us to be able to articulate our district's mission and vision and provide a supporting narrative around that work. It allows us to align with the state's areas of focus and show how our current strategies are aligned to areas of focus that we've identified as most critical as a school district. In addition, it allows us to highlight how local, state, federal, and other kinds of funding support strategies. What I want to highlight here is that the strategic plan is not all the work happening in city schools. When you read the plan, you'll see that very clearly. So it is not entirely comprehensive. It is really designed in this particular iteration under ESSA to align with 3 key areas of focus. The other thing that I want to make sure I'm calling out here is that the strategies that you'll see aren't new. This isn't an opportunity for the new and novel to be coming out. Rather, it's the current work that we are knee-deep in that we'll see within the ESSA strategic plan. So I just want to take a little bit of time. I'm going to go very briefly through each of these so that when folks do access the strategic plan online, you'll kind of know what the flavor is of each of these sections. First, the executive summary. The executive summary is intended to be a standalone document. It allows us to share our strategic plan narrative and really align a lot of the visionary work that we're doing here in city schools. Our equity policy, things around the blueprint, our cabinet priorities, the board priorities. It allows us to weave all of that together. The finance section, which all of you will notice is quite familiar from our budget book, literally comes from the budget book. It allows us to also analyze some questions from the state between last year's finances and this upcoming year's finances. This section is a bit new. In the master plan iterations previously, you'll probably recall that we had to provide information around certain content areas, say ELA and math, or answer questions about specific student subgroups, students with disabilities maybe, English language learners. In this new iteration of the strategic plan under ESSA, MSDE has aligned areas of focus, which each local school system has been asked to identify 2 to 3 of those in which we're going to be focusing our strategic plan. You'll notice here that the 6 outlined are also those areas which emerge in our Maryland report card. These are the areas under which indicators bubble up at the school level to create things like star ratings. So these in and of themselves should not also look unfamiliar. As part of the requirements for the strategic plan, each school system needed to really do 3 things, right? We needed to engage in a needs assessment. Through that needs assessment, ensuring equity and identifying from those 2 analyses particular areas of focus. So for the needs assessment, we were asked to look into each of the 6 areas across all of our schools. So again, ELA, math performance, growth, English language proficiency, graduation rate, on track toward graduations, those are our ninth grade sort of early warning indicator items, and school quality and student success, which the state really defines and focuses in on well-rounded curriculum and chronic absenteeism. So we assess those needs across all of our schools. I'll sort of come to our data story in just a second. And then we did the exact same thing, unpacking for each of our student subgroups. So those with disabilities, with limited language proficiency, along race lines, class lines, etc. Those who are homeless. So we ensured to do several cuts of our data to make sure that we were then honing in and identifying the most appropriate areas of focus. All local school systems were asked to identify 2 to 3 of those 6 that I previously highlighted. For city schools, and this may come as no surprise, we landed on the following 3. Academic achievement, so just our proficiency in reading or English language arts and math. Student growth in English language arts and math. And school quality and student success. Now I want to pause here for a minute because I say it may have come as no surprise that we landed on these items. In our last Teaching and Learning Committee meeting, as well as at the board meeting, the last board meeting in August, we were able to look at PARC data, we were able to look at our beginning of year data, we were able to look at data from cohorts over the past 4 years and really see that these were the spot-on indicators for us. You know, if we're looking at achievement, seeing that in 3rd through 8th grade, fewer than 25% of our students, sometimes as low as 16% of our students are actually meeting or exceeding proficiency, tells us that at a baseline, we're not there, right? And so honing in that particular area was a real need for us. When we think about growth, and it was highlighted very well this evening, Dr. Santelises noted, you know, Tench Tillman, for example, we're not just hitting the average 50 school growth, student performance growth measures, but that they're hitting far above that, which allows them to shrink the gap between them and their state peers. For us as a district, however, across all grade levels, that's not the case when you look at it in aggregate or when you disaggregate it by subgroups. And then with things like attendance, our attendance rate actually decreased from last year, from 87 to 86% in 2019, lower than the state's average of 94%. So again, these are just some high-level indicators that these are the right things to focus on. And I actually want to thank Commissioner McFadden, and I think in the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting when I came up, I was like, oh my gosh, Tench Tillman, thank goodness they went before me, because they are right there, the exemplars of the strategies that we've identified in our strategic plan. You will see the things that are outlined in here, and again, none of them are new. These have been systemic efforts that we've been undergoing for the last year through the blueprint. But the coaching that you see, that out-of-class dedicated coaching, staff development, a focus on new teachers, providing health supports, and removing those barriers to kids for coming to school and being able to effectively learn and build relationships, that's the work that you see inside of the strategic plan. So I really can't thank you enough for having them here again. They represent the vision and the promise of where all of these strategies at a systems level are trying to get us to go. So thank you. Across each of those areas, when you actually look and read the strategic plan itself, you'll get to see a description of the area of focus, the rationale for why we chose it, although I just sort of provided a quick shot high level here, identification of the root causes, as well as a description of how those root causes are going to be addressed. If you take a look at the chart, which recognizing is a rather small chart for a slide, for each area of focus, we've outlined multiple goals, objectives, strategies, a timeline, identified funding source or sources, as well as a proposed evaluation strategy to be able to understand whether or not those strategies are making moves toward the goals that we've outlined in the strategic plan. Again, none of it new. This table certainly is. It's not the way MSDE has asked us to represent it before. And I hope to hear feedback on whether or not it's useful in helping to really paint the picture of the strategies that we're using in alignment with each of the focus areas. Each of these are spelled out online within the master plan. I can take just a moment if you all want to. I just wanted to provide a quick example in each of the focus areas so we kind of get a sense of what we're talking about. In terms of academic achievement, right, a goal example, the percentage of students in kindergarten through grade 2 on grade level as measured by end-of-year Dibbles composite scores will increase by 20%. As a SMART goal, clear and measurable, and a strategy for that is really providing K-2 teachers with the professional learning around scientifically based reading instruction through professional development and ongoing supports. This is not new. This is a focus on pre-K to 2 literacy that we've had in the district, but just one example of what you'll see under that academic achievement area. For academic growth, going back to the SGP, the district will achieve a median student growth percentile of above 50 on PARCC in math. And so here, again, we're looking at not just raising student growth within our district, but shrinking the gap between our district and their statewide peers, right? The strategy there, Great Minds math content experts will provide differentiated professional development for math teachers. Again, we heard this even in Tench Tillman's example. It's exactly what they're doing across the board for their math teachers to ensure that they can perform at the level necessary for the students in their classrooms. Focus area number 3, school quality and student success, of which ours by and large focuses on attendance and chronic absenteeism. So an example of a goal here, city schools' percent of students not chronically absent will increase from 58.2% to 65% in the end of school year 1920. And so here we're looking to really reverse that downward trend, which we took over the course of the last year. An example here of this strategy, supporting the equipping of smooth functioning student wholeness rooms in 41 intensive learning sites to provide students with a safe, calming space. So again, nothing new. This part is clearly a piece of our blueprint. In addition to the areas of focus, the strategic plan provides the space where we as a district are able to talk about our supports to comprehensive support and improvement schools, our CSI schools, as well as our targeted support and improvement schools, or TSI schools. This is not the place, as well as our SIG-4 schools, which is our 100% project schools. You all have heard about them as well. This is not the place, I do want everyone to be mindful, you won't see the CSI individual school plans in here. That's not the intention of the strategic plan, and that's not the mechanism MSDE has set up in order to have those to be submitted. The TSI work, you will see how we are supporting it as a district, a list of the schools, and the support areas for identification. And we're currently working with MSDE to see how exactly they would like those plans and strategies embedded, if at all, into the current master plan model. Finally, this offers us an opportunity to talk about a few of the COMAR regulations that MSDE has asked some questions for all local school systems. I do want to note here, while we see the educational equity policy, gifted and talented education policy, regulation I should say, and comprehensive teacher and induction and mentoring, the educational equity regulation is not final yet. It is still in draft form. So just as a flag there, we've included our equity policy for city schools. But again, if there's something to shift in the COMAR regulation, that could obviously shift what we've put in there as well. But you will see some responses to the gifted and talented education regulation, and you will also see the outline for our comprehensive teacher induction and mentoring program. Okay, so a lot kind of goes into the strategic plan, pulling it together, ensuring that we're trying to be as clear as possible and as inclusive as possible in terms of outlining the key strategies in alignment with the areas of focus for the district. So I do just want to make sure that I'm being thoughtful and thanking all of the offices that have contributed to the development and the compilation of the strategic plan. That said, we need feedback. Every year we ask for feedback. I always make sure to put my city schools email address out there for any and all questions. This will get posted on our city schools website following tonight's board meeting. We are also doing targeted outreach with BTU, PSASA, PCAB, and CCAC, so they will receive the actual master plan, as well as we've established a feedback survey mechanism, which some people like, some people won't. But I certainly welcome all questions to come via email if they feel like the survey mechanism isn't a useful place for them to do that, but they'll have options for both. Timeline. So we presented the Teaching Learning Committee last week. Today we're here with you all to share that the strategic plan is open and available for comment. From tonight through the 8th of November, we'll be requesting public comment and feedback. So it'll be open for a month for preview. Our draft submission as a school district is due to the state on the 15th. We will then receive information back from them within a week or so. Our responses to their questions or clarifying questions will be due back to them at the end of the month. It comes back here to this group for public board vote on the 12th, and then the final submission is due to MSDE on the 15th. Upon their approval, this will go to the board at the State Board of Education on December the 3rd. Questions, comments?
Commissioner Frank?
So in the economic development world, there's an agency, federal agency called the Economic Development Administration. And in order to access EDA money, you have to do something called a comprehensive economic development strategy. It's a prerequisite to accessing that department's money. And sometimes the city sees it as an opportunity to do a genuine, citywide, meaningful, comprehensive economic strategy, and other times they see it as something we have to do to access that money. And I'm curious because we've talked about strategic planning on the board. This is a strategic plan. It will include in it goals, I guess, and metrics, all the things that strategic plans include. Then we have Commissioner Bondima, who is heading up the Strategic Planning Committee. We've talked about what we should be doing. I'm not on the committee, but what should be done as a committee in terms of setting goals and objectives and metrics for the district. And so I'm curious, I know we're in a public setting here, but I'm curious how much import do we put in this document as a genuine strategic plan for the district? And when we say strategic plan, is that what we mean? Does it mean we will use this document to guide our investments, our budget decisions, where our priorities are? There is a public component of this. So I'm curious,
Sure.
We've done this in the past, and I didn't ask this in the past, so I'm curious, how do we view this document in terms of the decisions that we make as a board and the CEO and her team makes as leadership?
So thank you for that question. I'm happy to respond unless if, Allison, you're.
Yeah, I mean, I think this document has a lot of requirements that the state establishes in terms of the format and the way, what we have to report and what has to be included. So I wouldn't say it's the document that the blueprint is more what we use for our strategic plan in terms of how we guide our work. This document has so many requirements to meet Title I requirements, to meet other requirements that the state establishes. Those requirements tend to change fairly often. Like this format is fairly different than the last format, and so using it that way is not, that's not really how we use it.
No, I would just like to say that the document, I think it's quite interesting. I'm used to writing strategic master plans and plans. The board is doing a strategic plan as well, and information that you present to us gives us an idea of what's going on, and we're coming up with the board's strategic plan. So at some point, a few things might overlap, but we're in the process of writing it.
Sure, and I certainly hope there's some overlap there. That'd be great.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I see it, Commissioner McFadden. I'm going to go back to slide 3, and I think it answers part of the question. I mean, having worked doing some of these in the past, where I know the terminology says strategic plan, primarily this is for accountability and reporting. And school improvement documentation to Maryland State Department of Education.
I think it's important to define what you just did. Thank you.
Okay. But I mean, so in the sense that that's strategic, yes, but I don't think it's the same context that we are, that we are talking. Which McFadden and Reed, I'm sorry.
One second, Madam Chair, you're speaking about the strategic plan that they.
I'm actually reading the slide for this presentation,
That's what I'm
yes.
asking you, that's right,
Yes.
okay. Which is different from what we're talking about.
Madam Chair, I just want, thank you, Casey, for this. I just want to make a comment about us as a system, Baltimore City having the majority of the CSI and TSI schools within our district. And when we talk about equity and making sure that we are being advocates at the state level for pushing things like Kerwin to make sure that the resources are also provided to us to make sure that we can actually get the work done to really see this improvement. So I just wanted to highlight that moment as we're about to go into a legislative session, and Kerwin is this, big, huge focus. You can't place all of these demands on us without providing the adequate resources for us to do what we actually need to drive student achievement and to fix our communities. I think it all goes hand in hand. So, yes, great work that you're doing. You're going to give us that huge book and binder, but at the same time, we have to be the advocates for our young people and for our system to make sure that we are getting the adequate resources to do this work. Because, you're making great strides as a system, as a district, but if we don't have the resources and the money and the support to do it, the state can come up with whatever plan they want to come up with, but if we don't have that, the equity and resources, it's really for naught. So thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Commissioner Reed?
Dr. Sandalisa, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You have the overarching plan is the blueprint. The chief academic officer has his strategic plan. So basically, this is a compact between the academic part of the system in the state. The way I see it. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a subset almost.
Yeah, I think that is a more direct way, to put it, or a different way. I think, Commissioner Chenya's description, because she's lived it, is exactly that. Like, this is a way that we communicate to the state what we are doing. I will say, I think what the board has decided to undertake and the work that we need to do on the next, the next set body of work in terms of specifics coming out of the blueprint is something that we need to do. And I think that is a genuine, authentic need. Again, in listening to some of the feedback from some focus groups, the other piece that came out is, folks want to know what the next stage of that work looks like. And, we have, I know the board has had discussions about, what are the actual setting of targets and benchmarks, and how do we, instead of just reporting on the data, actually use the data to drive our performance in ways that are narrowed and strategic. Those components, to me, characterize a strategic plan. This does not reflect that. So I'm kind of doing both and saying, yes, you're right, we do need that, and that is a need, but this isn't it.
Thank you.
Last thing I would just say is to thank Casey for pulling this together, because this is very, very hard to pull together. You're pulling together all different types of requirements and then trying to thread it to all the things that we are doing, so make it make sense in terms of what we're doing with regards to the blueprint, how we're implementing the intensive learning sites, how we're, focusing the CSI funds. So it's a lot of work to bring this all together and to make it coherent and as useful as it can be, given all the many different requirements within it. So thank you so much for doing all that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And again, just a shout out to all the offices who have really contributed, because to sort of also answer your question, Commissioner Reed, the blueprint is our kind of like guiding light too as we're answering these. So the 3 areas that we chose are very keenly aligned to the work that we're doing there, because it's a true opportunity for us to say, no, these are the exact strategies, and we have an opportunity to map that out in the state's format. So it can be useful, it's useful to us in that way, for sure.
One last thing I'd like to say, and I'd like to encourage folks, to really look at the timeline and if you'd like to read, to really take a look at the document. But just a reminder, since we just came back from a conference with the Maryland Association of Boards of Education, and one of the one of the strong feelings that are coming from our board as well as other boards as we look at Kerwin is around this idea of an additional layer of accountability. I would say just what you've shared with us in terms of this layer of accountability, it's a strong argument as we consider the forum and the opportunities to testify that this is quite a bit in terms of oversight, and to add more on top of that is really not necessarily something that we would advocate for. So thank you again for all the hard work.
Thank you all.
We have some committee reports. So Commissioner Frank, Operations
I
Committee?
actually filed mine. Do you have it?
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's written?
Yeah, they're all written.
Oh,
They're
thank
written
you.
or uploaded.
Okay, so they're all written and can be uploaded, but we do have one that will be an oral one, correct?
Yeah, I just want.
Commissioner Bondima would like to give us an update from MAID.
This is a very brief update. It was quite a bit of information that was passed through the MAID committee last week at CUBE. But just some highlights, DeWanda and I thought we might bring it up. It's still all about Kerwin Commission. It says some of the things that was passed. $125 million in casino revenues became available for 2020, FY 2020, thanks to the passage of Question 1 on a 2018 ballot to convert the entire Educational Trust Fund, ETF, to new increased funding to support Kerwin Commission. And the ETF, as a resource of guaranteed increased funding for education, will grow from $125 million FY 2020 to $250 million in FY 2021 to $379 million FY 2022 and over $500 million in FY 2023. And also, one thing that I'd like to mention, as far as teacher salaries, incentive grants, provides grants to increase the teachers' salaries to improve recruitment and retention of high-quality teachers. And the board approved that. Right. And also concentration of poverty grants, two things we thought was important in the midst of everything, provides grants to public schools in which at least 80% of the students eligible for free and reduced price meals. To support community schools will coordinate with wraparound services, and also for both FY 2020 and FY 2021, the state must distribute a grant to each local school system equal to $833,000 for each eligible school. Each school must employ one community school coordinator and provide full-time coverage by at least one professional healthcare practitioner. I thought that those things might be important to share with the community.
Thank you. And as you know, tonight we did some procurement on some of those funds, and I think we heard that we're going to get a report as to how our schools actually did use those funds at an upcoming meeting. I'd like to just give you just updates on some upcoming meetings. Operations Committee will meet here in the boardroom on Tuesday, October the 15th at 10:30 a.m. The Policy Committee, same day, October 15th at 3:30 p.m. in the boardroom. There is a board forum on October the 16th. That's a Wednesday, 5:30 to 6:30 here, and it will be our first conversation around budget priorities, and the community is invited to come and discuss and recommend some of those to us as we begin the budget season. October the 17th, Parent Community Advisory Board, PCAB, will meet here in the boardroom at 6:30. October the 22nd is our next public board meeting. October the 24th, it was mentioned earlier, is a forum on Kerwin, which will be at Dorothy Height Elementary Middle. And on November the 5th, Teaching and Learning Committee meeting will be here at 3:30. And please, if you want to come to that, be sure you vote before you come, because I think that's Election Day.
Could you also, the CEO community conversation this Thursday?
This Thursday at Roland Park is CEO's community conversation, begins at
6.
At 6. So put that.
Madam Chair,
It's on literacy. I'm getting all the information. Got it? Okay.
may I ask how the board forum is being promoted and publicized? Do we know?
Well, we share them with communications, and they usually do put it on social media like a day or two before.
So social media is the way that we're promoting the board forum?
It's been the primary way.
Okay. I would also like, Madam Chair, to congratulate Dr. James Hassan. She has newly been elected to the president role of the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. And I think as Baltimore City, this is your home base. I think it is important for us to celebrate her on that accomplishment. As you advocate for us and advocate for folks all over the state, congratulations, Dr. James Hassan.
Thank you. If there is no other business, is there a motion to adjourn? Commissioner Frank?
Second.
Commissioner McFadden, and I believe everyone is going to consent that we will adjourn. Thank you and good evening.